Hey, welcome back to my channel, and welcome back to another episode of the series, My Favorite Joke. Tonight we're going to be doing a episode on George Carlin and my favorite George Carlin joke. George Carlin needs no introduction. He's one of the greatest comedians of all time, arguably the greatest comedian of all time, rivaled only by people like maybe Lenny Bruce, Dave Chappelle. Nobody beats Carlin. Another reason why he's one of the greatest of all time is because one of his bits, 7 Dirty Words, was the landmark bit in a court case. That is why we have like explicit warnings on stuff.
Cursing, cussing, swearing, and all I could think of was shit, piss, fuck, cunt, cocksucker, motherfucker, and tits.
This was a landmark case in the 70s, and there is a little asterisk in history where George Carlin's stand-up sits and now has permanently formed culture for the rest of time. One of my favorite things about George Carlin is how grandiose his material is, but he still brings it down to a low level, if that makes sense. And one of my favorite things about stand-up in general is when you can take a highbrow concept and bring it down in a palatable and understandable way while keeping it just hilarious. And the bit that I absolutely love more than anything else in the world is his bit, The War on the Persian Gulf. It's an 8.5-minute bit, so this might be a longer video. I might cut some stuff out of it. It's one of my favorite bits because he's talking about in the bit, and I don't want to spoil anything, but he basically talks about war and relates it to penises. George Carlin is up there talking about the military-industrial complex and imperialism.
Using dicks.
Dude, that's one of the best things about comedy, I think, ever. And I love that more than anything else in the world. So let's go ahead and break down George Carlin's The War in the Persian Gulf. Please excuse the poor quality. I am watching this on YouTube.
This country's only 200 years old, and already we've had 10 major wars. We average a major war in this country every 20 years, so we're good at it. And it's a good thing we are. We're not very good at anything else anymore. Can't build a decent car, can't make a TV set or a VCR worth of fuck.
Okay, so George Carlin, George Carlin's been doing stand-up for 100 years. So at this point in his career, he's kind of built in the credibility that not really any comedian has. So George Carlin can kind of go up there and not meander necessarily, but he can kind of go up there and take his time really setting up what he wants to talk about. And this whole minute basically acts as the premise. Americans like war. All we're good at is war. There's nothing else we can do besides war. And if that's the premise, and like the mini punchline in that premise is we can't make a VCR with a fuck, but we'll bomb the shit out of you. That's the basic premise, which sets up the next 7 to 8 minutes.
Got no steel industry left, can't get health care to our old people, can't educate our young people, but we can bomb the shit out of your country, all right? Huh? We can bomb the shit out of your country, all right? Especially if your country is full of brown people. You got some brown people in your country, tell them to watch the fuck out, or we'll goddamn bomb them.
Again, he's taking this concept of American imperialism and the military-industrial complex and just goes, if you're brown, look out, because we'll bomb you. One thing about George Carlin, especially in his later work, and this is something that a lot of comedians criticize him for, and I would too, especially in his last couple of specials, is the difference between laughter and clapter. And I talked about this a little bit in my What Makes People Laugh for Psychological Theories video, where clapter is basically just saying things that will garner agreement and then the audience agreeing with you, more so than it being an actual good joke with a setup and a punchline. And this is something that, yeah, George Carlin's probably very guilty of later on in his career. But here in this Jammin' in New York special, I feel like is the perfect combination, and in my opinion, peak Carlin, when he's talking about bombing brown people. And I think it is getting equal parts laughter and clapter, thereby being artistically meritable enough to be laughter and not creatively unoriginal to be clapter. Because I think he's talking about very important things, and I still think what he's talking about is funny enough for this to be considered one of the greatest comedy bits of all time.
Well, when's the last last white people you can remember that we bombed? Can you remember the last white? Can you remember any white people we've ever bombed? The Germans. The Germans are the only ones. And the only reason for that is because they were trying to cut in on our action. They wanted to dominate the world. Bullshit. That's our fucking job. That's our fucking job.
Yep, that is. Oh, I'm getting. These are goosebumps, bro. Oh, man. Okay. When's the last white people we've bombed? The Germans, because they were trying to cut in on our action. That's our fucking job. Brilliant. Literally a perspective that I don't think people have thought about before, that the only time we've ever bombed white people is when they try to take over the world, when that's what we're supposed to be doing as Americans. Genius perspective. Undeniably true, while at the same time being hilarious. I am 2 minutes into this 8-minute bit and I already got goosebumps.
Now we only bomb brown people. Not because they're trying to cut in on our action, just because they're brown. To me, war is nothing but a whole lot of prick waving.
Okay, this is the part I want to talk about. War is nothing but a whole lot of prick waving.
War is just a lot of men standing around in a field waving their pricks at one another. Simple thing, that's all it is. Men are insecure about the size of their dicks, and so they have to go to war over it. That's what all that asshole jock bullshit is all about. That's what all that adolescent macho male posturing and strutting in bars and locker rooms is all about. It's called dick fear. Men are terrified that their pricks are inadequate, and so they have to compete to feel better. And because war is the ultimate competition, basically men are killing one another in order to improve their self-esteem. You don't have to be a history major or a political scientist to see the bigger dick foreign policy theory.
The bigger dick foreign policy theory. Genius. I love this so much. This is my favorite bit. This is one of my favorite bits of all time. So far, what George Carlin has managed to do, he is talking about military-industrial complex, imperialism, racism, and feminism, toxic masculinity, when the common person thinks he's just talking about waving your dick around.
It sounds like this. What? They have bigger dicks? Bomb them!
Okay, so this next part, he's talking about the manhood problem in this country, how people are insecure about their manhood. I think it was in one of his books, he talks about some of the main sources of inspiration where he gets his act are in 3 places. One is he calls the big world, which is things like imperialism, things like government overreach, the big world, like world affairs. Then he calls it the little world. Like little world stuff is like Jerry Seinfeld stuff, where it's like, you ever notice that when you close your eyes, the pillow's over here, but then you close this eye and then the pillow's right back over here? That's like little world stuff. It's like the tiny little things that we all relate to that kind of bring us together a little bit. And then the third place he draws inspiration from is language. And then this whole next chunk is big world and language. I've got more goosebumps. I fucking love stand-up.
This whole country has a manhood problem. You can tell from the language we use. Language always gives you away. What did we do wrong in Vietnam? We pulled out. When you're fucking people, you gotta stay in there and fuck them good, fuck them all the way, fuck them till the end, fuck them to death. Stay in there and keep fucking them until they're all dead.
2 more things I want to say about George Carlin. In the way he performs, you can tell by the way that he's carrying himself, the way he's carrying his body, and like the mannerisms that he uses. He goes, "We pulled out," and he looks around like that, and he goes, "Fuck him good, fuck him to death." He's using his facial expressions, he's using his body, and he's not just telling you a bit, he's performing the bit. Sometimes there are comics who are like one-liner type comics who just sit there and they say the joke, and the joke on its own, set up punchline, so fucking good that they don't need to express themselves and like be outward and perform. But that's not George Carlin's style. George Carlin embodies what he's talking about and performs it, probably because he actually feels what he talks about and cares about what he talks about. And another thing he does is when the audience is laughing, he repeats the part that gets the laugh until they stop laughing. Probably he can do because he's performing in amphitheaters. They laugh at "fuck 'em to death." He goes, "Fuck 'em to death, fuck 'em to death," which I think is something that only George Carlin can do and something that only George Carlin can get away with.
That's why George Bush had to say in the Persian Gulf, "This will not be another Vietnam." He actually used these words, "This time we're going all the way." If you want to know what happened in the Persian Gulf, just remember the names of the two men who were running that war, Dick Cheney and Colin Powell. Somebody got fucked in the ass.
An observation nobody else would make that makes a point about something that is so crucial and important. This is literally comedy at its best. I don't know what else. I'm just such a simp. I'm such a fucking simp for George Carlin, I tell you. One of my favorite comedians of all time. One of the best comedians of all time. And some people will be like, "Oh yeah, Carlin's great, but everybody loves Carlin." Yeah, everybody loves Carlin because he's good, okay? But yeah, that was the video. George Carlin is the fucking masterclass embodied into a person. Comedy will never be the same without him, and nobody will ever hold a candle to him. If you like what you saw and you want to see more, go ahead and hit like and subscribe. If you want to see me talk about other comedians, leave a comment about those comedians, and probably I'll talk about them. I don't know. Right now, I'm pumping a bunch of these out just to, get the ball rolling. But, if you guys want to see me talk about other comedians, let me know in the comments down below. Like and subscribe, all that jazz. Love each other.